In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to mint your artwork fully on-chain using Tezos. That means the artwork will not be minted using an IPFS link where the artwork exists off-chain. The artwork will actually be minted directly on-chain and stored on the Tezos blockchain fully in the form of code. I'm going to show you how to use both the Zero contract to do that and the app Zero Unbound. It's very straightforward and very easy to use compared to last time. So stick with me and I'll walk you through the whole process. For the tutorial, we'll be using this app called Zero Unbound, which was created by Jams to Blues. Underpinning this app is the Zero contract, which was created by YesDemZero, which actually allows you to mint directly on chain. Not only does this contract allow you to mint fully on chain, it also allows you to edit your tokens and your artwork after minting. So if you were used to trying to make sure that every bit of information was correct before you minted, and then having to burn the token because you made a mistake, that is no longer an issue, because once you mint, you can actually change the artwork, you can change the title, and you can change the tags and the royalties. So everything is fully editable, which is a huge game changer for minting in general. I'm just briefly going to show you first what your mints look like when you mint off-chain using an IPFS link. So over here on Object, you can see I've got a collection called the Retroman Arcade. Each piece is quite large, so they're 4K videos that I've minted with audio. Now it is important to bear in mind that minting on-chain does cost a lot more because of the storage costs. With this particular token, for instance, I'm just going to turn the volume down. The file size was around 85 megabytes. So that's a huge file, and that's because I'd upscaled it from the original pixel art dimensions of 335 by 213 pixels to 4096 by 2600 pixels. So it has made the file size much bigger, which is fine, because the file size would be very large to mint on Zero contract, and even though it would be possible, it would cost a lot of money. However, there is also the fully on-chain stage map, which has been minted on Zero contract, which can be seen here in this collection on Zero Unbound. You can also see it on Object as well, as Object indexes all of the Zero contract artwork. To illustrate the difference in the token, however, I'm going to show you using Better Call Dev. So I'm going to take the collection and token of this original piece here. I'm going to go to Better Call Dev and paste it in. And you can see it was minted in the Cube Decant collection. So I'm just going to come over to the Tokens tab here and scroll down to token ID 65, which we can see here, Varamor's Port Retroman Arcade. I'm going to click the drop down and you can see there's the thumbnail for the artwork, but the actual artifact URI, which is the artwork itself, is simply just a link to IPFS off-chain. So the actual artwork is not stored on Tezos. It is just a token that has a link to IPFS. The downside of that is that if anything happens to IPFS, if it's purged or anything else happens, or if it's no longer pinned and the marketplace stops paying for it to be pinned, then you could potentially lose that artwork as well. Now, if I take the fully on-chain collection, I'm going to paste that into Better Call Dev, and you can see Varamor's Port stage map. Look at the difference in the token. In the drop down, you can see the artifact URI is no longer just a link, it's actually the artwork in code form as what's called a data URI. So all of this, which goes much further down, is the artwork stored fully on the Tezos blockchain. So that means when a collector buys this token, they are actually buying the artwork itself. And when they view it in a browser, the browser reinterprets that code to show them the artwork. So that's the difference between minting on-chain fully and minting using an IPFS link. So how do we do this? Well, I'm going to jump back into Zero Unbound. I'm going to switch to Ghostnet just to demonstrate. It will cost quite a bit of money to mint depending on the size of your artwork. So the calculation is approximately 20 kilobytes equals around 6 Tez to mint. So you do have to bear that in mind when you are minting. However, that has the plus side of making the artwork automatically have a higher value because of the cost of minting. It's in fact quite important when you mint to mention the fact that it is fully on chain, sometimes in the description or even in the tags, just to let people know that this is minted fully on chain, and they'll understand why the price will be much higher when you're selling it. Now, if you're going to use Ghostnet, you are going to need to get yourself some Ghostnet XTZ so that you can spend. It's free to do. All you need to do is jump to this website, which is the Tezos Ghostnet faucet. I'll put the link in the description. You connect your wallet, and then you just simply say how many Tezos that you want, and then click request. It will take a little bit of time to receive, but once you've done that, you're able to spend those on Ghostnet just to be able to test out. Okay, so in Zero Unbound, the first page you'll be greeted with is this. If you want to create a collection, you simply click Create Collection. Now bear in mind, again, the collection itself is also minted fully on chain, and that includes the thumbnail. So it's going to cost a little bit more to mint than you would be used to on something like Object, where I think it costs about 1 Tezos. But I'll show you that as we walk through it. So we're going to call the collection Stage Maps. Include a symbol of 3 to 5 characters. I'm not entirely sure what this is for, but I'm just using characters that mean something to me, which is RMU. I'm going to put a description in. I can also put a link in if I want, which appears both on Object and on Zero Unbound. I'm going to put the author name exactly as my address appears. So this is my Tezos address that I purchased, which is Retromani. And it automatically populates the author address and the creator wallet address. You can also add a license here and change the art type. Then I'm going to select a thumbnail. Do bear in mind though that your thumbnail can't be larger than 8.2 kilobytes. This unfortunately is one of the limitations of creating your collection on Zero Unbound, but again remember that that thumbnail is minted directly on chain. Accept the terms. You can click on the terms and read them for yourself here. And now I'm going to click deploy. And I'm just going to speed this up. It takes a little bit longer to mint using Zero Contract. That's because the information is being stored directly on chain and it's a lot more information. So do have a little bit of patience when minting. And you can see to be able to mint this collection, the storage fee is showing here as 7.29 Tez. So as I said, it's more expensive than minting a collection on Object, but that is because the entire collection and all that information exists entirely on chain. Okay, so we see we've got success here. We've got a few options. We can either view the collection on Better Core Dev, directly on Object if we want as well, or we can go to Manage, or we can copy the actual contract address if we want to. I'm going to view it firstly on Object just to show you, and you can see there the collection appears the same in Object. We see the information that we put there plus the link at the bottom. If we view the contract on Better Core Dev, this is basically the back end of Tezos, but we can see we can view all of the same information here. And actually, one of the big benefits about Zero Contract, it also allows you to interact with a collection here. So as well as using Zero Unbound, if you've got a little bit of know-how, you can actually come and interact with the contract here and mint on the back end. So you actually don't need an app or a marketplace to be able to transact with this. Should anything happen to those marketplaces. So that's the big benefit of minting fully on chain and using open source technologies, is that even if everything went down, you've still got access to it and you still completely own the contract. It's not reliant on any third party. But for this, we're going to jump back into Zero Unbound. And from the home page, I can just click Manage Collections. And here's the collection. I've minted a bunch of collections on Ghostnet, as you can see, to test out. But here's the collection we just made. So I'm going to click this little icon here to load the contract. The first thing we're going to want to do is mint. But let's just say we realize we made a spelling mistake with the collection. Well, with the Zero Contract, you can edit the collection, but you must do that before you've minted any artwork or any tokens to that collection. So what I would have to do is go to edit contract metadata, and I can change any of the information here. So let's say I want to change the symbol. I want to add some more information. And let's say I even wanted to swap out the cover image. I can now update that. You can see the fee is calculated. There's no fee because we already paid for the storage. And that's one of the great things about the Zero contract, is once you've paid for the storage, you can swap out the artworks. As long as it's the same size, it shouldn't cost you anything more in storage. However, there is a gas fee, which you can see here. I'm going to click OK. You can see again here in Temple, there is 0 Tez, but a little bit of gas. And you can also notice that Zero Unbound calculated that cost correctly as well. Okay, so there's a success. You can click close. I can jump over to object just to confirm if that change took place. And there you can see it. And we can see the change also took place here. Okay, so I'm going to click this load contract button again. And you're seeing that that thumbnail hasn't updated yet, but sometimes that's just a cache issue. So I can do a hard refresh on the Mac, which is Command-Shift-R. I'm not sure what it is for Windows, but when you do a hard refresh, it should solve that issue. The next thing we want to do is mint a token. So I'm going to click mint here. It's pretty straightforward, as you would expect, but you can see that there is a little message at the top of this section, which is saying looking for the Sifr Zero community mint. What that means is if you don't want to create a collection and you actually want to mint to a collective contract, very similar to the hen contract that Taya uses, or the open object contract that Object uses, well, Zero contract has the same thing, and it's called Sifr Zero. So if you click that, it will take you to Sifr Zero. And so this works pretty similarly to minting on Zero Unbound, but what it does is it mints directly to this larger collection. So you don't have to pay to create a collection. You can just mint directly to it. First, we're going to get Zero Unbound minting done first. Okay, so I'm going to give it a title. We're going to do, we can choose whatever editions that we want, but we're going to choose it as a 1 of 1. And I'm just going to put some info in here. I'm going to upload the artifact, which is the artwork. Now, bear in mind that these are SVGs, and there's a reason I'm using SVGs. Because I'm minting fully on chain, I want to be able to mint at the smallest file size, but not lose any quality for the viewer. Now, typically what pixel artists do is once they've completed their artwork, let's say like it's 300 and something by 200 and something pixels in dimensions, it's very, very small for someone to view. So in something like Sprite, they'll blow it up by 300, 400, 500% so that they can mint it at a large enough size that people can see. However, that increases the file size itself. When you convert it to an SVG file, whether it's a GIF or whether it's a series of PNGs or even a single PNG, what the SVG does is actually expand the artwork to fit the browser, and it essentially blows it up automatically without increasing the file size. What that means is the artwork will remain the original dimensions and the file size will remain the same as well, but the actual artwork will expand to fit the browser. Now, a huge benefit of Zero Unbound is that you can view the pixel art at its original dimension and then also zoom in. That's not something you can do on Object. So it's a really great feature for Zero Unbound. However, if you want to cover both bases to make sure that people can see both the artwork on Zero Unbound and on Object when it indexes it, using the SVG technique is a much more useful approach. I'm going to leave Jams to Blue's tool that allows you to convert very quickly and easily in the description below. Okay, so I'm going to choose the Faltech SVG. You can see it's 116 kilobytes. It's already populated the address in the creators tab. I'm just going to put my name here. I'm going to set my royalties. And I can also add attributes if I want. And I can also add tags. And finally, I just need to agree to the terms. Now, usually if I'm minting on Object, this is a very nervous moment because before I mint, I'm checking over and over and over again, because once I've minted, that's it, it's locked in. And if I've made a mistake, then I have to burn it. And it's not really burning it, I'm actually sending it to a burn address, which really isn't getting rid of the token, it's just moving it to a different address. With the Zero contract, if I mint and then notice a mistake, as long as I haven't sent that artwork to anyone or it hasn't been collected, then I can actually go in and edit pretty much everything, and that includes the actual artwork itself, so I can swap that out. And the great thing is, apart from gas, it doesn't actually cost any additional money to do that. So if this artwork, for instance, costs me 50 Tezos to mint, and I swap it out with another piece of artwork which is exactly the same size, I've already paid for that storage, so I wouldn't have to pay again. So I'm just going to click mint here. And you can see it's calculated the cost of gas, and it's also calculated how many transactions it's going to take, so 8 transactions, and the total cost will be 43 Tezos. So I'm going to click OK. So that 43 Tezos is now going to be split over 8 transactions. Again, you've got to have a bit of patience while minting fully on-chain. So here we can see the storage fee for this first transaction is going to cost 2.69 Tezos. So I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to speed through all of this, but just acknowledge that this is going to take a lot longer in reality. You might get messages like this, don't worry about it, it should still go through. So just have patience with it. You can see now that this transaction is going to cost 5 Tezos. Okay, so we have success, and from here we've got a few options. I'm going to click View Token so we can see the artwork, which opens a separate window, and there we see the full stage map fully minted on chain. You can also see we've got a few options on the side here. We've got full screen. The first thing Zero Unbound does is show the artwork at its original dimensions. However, we can use the fit to screen command here to fill it up, but we also have this zoom in tool, so we can actually zoom all the way in and view the artwork. The next option we have is the share button. Very similar to object share button, where you can actually share directly to X if you want to. You can copy the link, but there's a really nice additional feature which is download, which means we can actually download the actual artwork itself. So you can see here we can download the SVG. And of course you've got the options that you would expect, which is buy, list and offer. And bear in mind that Zero Unbound is not just an app for minting, it's also a marketplace. And as a marketplace, it takes 0% fees. So when you list your artwork here and sell it, all of the Tezos goes directly into your wallet. Same goes for if you're a collector. If you're spending your money on an artist you want to support, it's kind of nice knowing that when you buy that artwork, all of the money goes to that artist. Okay, so there's something you might have noticed, is that there was no option to create a thumbnail. That's something that you have to do afterwards, but that's fine because actually it's going to show you how you can also edit some of the other information as well. So let's jump back to the Manage Collections menu here. I'm going to click this to load it, and I'm going to jump into the Edit Token Metadata here. So when I click that, I'll select the token from the drop down here, and you can see here's the token at the moment. So I can rename this and add stage map to it, and you can see that edits here. I might be able to add some more information here, so I could say file type SVG, file size 116 kilobytes. Sometimes it's good to know that, especially for collectors, they can see what they're actually buying on a more granular level. So I like to put information like that in there. I can change the royalties, and I can even add a tag here as well, and even edit the attributes if I need to. But here's what we're looking for, is the add thumbnail URI under custom metadata rows. So I'm going to click add thumbnail. You'll see this menu pops up. I'm going to click upload, and I'm going to get the thumbnail that I want. Notice how these thumbnails are also very small in file size. similar to the collection. It's really important to try and keep them as small as possible. And bear in mind that Zero Unbound actually does blow up the thumbnail. So especially if it's pixel art, you don't really have to worry if it's very small, because it will enlarge it and keep the pixels looking as pristine as possible using the nearest neighbor technique. Okay, so now I'm going to click update. You can see that there's going to be a gas fee, of course, but there's also going to be an additional storage of 2.69 Tezos. That's because we're adding more artwork, and in this case it was the thumbnail. So that's going to cost a little bit of extra storage. So I'm going to click OK. And we can see we've got a success there. I'm just going to go and check out what it looks like on Object. So I'm going to do a hard refresh on Object. And we should be able to see, there we go, we see the piece with the thumbnail here. And if I click in, we can see the changes took place. And you can see all the information there as well. So that shows that Object is also indexing all of these changes too. I'm also going to show you how you can actually replace the artwork itself as well. You can also add something called an extra URI, which means you can actually add additional artwork to your piece. Now, that's not available to view on Object, unfortunately. However, on Zero Unbound, if you upload multiple artworks, the viewer can actually switch between them. But I will show you what that means now. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on Replace Artifact. I'm going to select the token, and you can see here it says token already has artifact URI. I'm going to clear that. I'm going to click OK. And you can see it doesn't cost anything in storage, but what it's doing is removing the artwork. So you do have to be careful about this to some degree, but know that it doesn't really cost you any money to do, just a bit of gas. So now, if I go to Replace Artifact, I choose the token again. If I just do a hard refresh on that, in fact, and go to Replace Artifact, choose the token from the drop down, you can see now that the only thing that remains is the thumbnail. The artwork or the artifact has disappeared. I can now upload a new piece of artwork. So let's choose a completely different piece of artwork, in fact. Quantum Field. That's 133 kilobytes. Now bear in mind, the original size was 116 kilobytes. So this is slightly larger, which means although we won't have to pay for the 116 kilobytes that we already paid for, we will need to pay an additional cost for the 16 or 17 kilobytes that we need in additional storage. So I'm going to click Append now, and you can see it says the storage burn is 49 Tezos. But remember, we've already paid a certain amount, so I think we paid 42 Tezos. So that would be a difference of, is it 7 Tezos we should have to pay. So if I click OK, you can see it's going to take 9 transactions. But as we see here, the first transaction is free. So we see here the 8th transaction will cost 1.3 Tezos. All the previous transactions didn't cost anything in storage fee. And as expected, the final transaction will cost 4.3 Tezos. And there we go, we've got a success message, so we can close that. So let's just quickly explore that collection and see if that change took place. So over here, I've got a bunch of Ghostnet mints. These are all on Ghostnet, so they're not real. However, I'm going to click on this one. We can see there's the artwork. It's got the same thumbnail, but if I click inside, now the artwork has changed. So we literally minted, put some artwork up, and then decided we didn't like that artwork or it was the wrong one and swapped it out. And just to prove that that takes place, let's jump over to Object. And let's just do a refresh over here as well. And there we go. The mint has completely changed. And of course, as you would expect, we can go back to Manage Collections and we can actually edit the information, including the thumbnail as well. Because now that it's a different piece of artwork, obviously we're going to need to change all of the other information that accompanies it. So to do that, I'm going to go to Edit Metadata Token. I'm going to select our token here. I'm going to change this, and I'm going to swap out the thumbnail as well, which we can see if I click upload. We can see it's showing these taking place of what we want it to look like, and then click update. And you can see storage cost 0. Let's jump back to the collection to make sure that that took place. And there we see it. The new thumbnail, the new title. If obviously I click in, all the information is updated as well. And again, let's just double check on object. And we can see the thumbnails changed there as well. So all of that information changes in real time pretty much, and then gets indexed by object as well, which I think is a complete game changer for the way at least I mint, because now I don't have to worry that I made any mistakes. I can change everything if I need to. It also removes most of the need for burning as well. I think most of the time people burn, unless they're doing it as a specific thing to burn their tokens after a certain period of time. A lot of the burns happen because there's a mistake. So someone has minted something, they've made a mistake, they can't do anything about it, so they burn it. Well, in this case, you don't need to burn it. You can just swap the artwork out, which when we're talking about minting fully on chain, because the cost can be so high, it's actually a really important feature as well. So it shows that you don't actually need to spend any extra money if you've made those mistakes, apart from a little bit of gas fee. So I'm going to jump back into Manage Collections, and I'm going to show you now how you can add extra artwork onto the end of this piece, which even though it's only viewable on Zero Unbound at the moment, hopefully Object might include this in the future, but it definitely does exist, and we'll see that on Better Call Dev when we have a look at the back end, that all of the artwork is minted within that one token. So I'm going to click here and go to Replace Extra URI. So I can choose our token again here, which is now called Quantum Field Stage Map. I can upload artifact. I'm going to upload his portrait here. And you can see it's added a bit of extra information here. So it said it's an extra asset as a PNG. The label is PNG. It's given it a name as Retroman. I can change that to say Retroman Portrait if I want. And then click Append as normal. Again, remember, this is more artwork that I'm adding, so it's going to carry an extra cost. You can see here it's 1.23 Tezos. Now, I'm not really using this feature to its full effect, but I've been speaking to Jams to Blues, and he has some really cool ideas, and one of them is how this could be used, for instance, for something like a comic book, where you would have multiple pages. But I'm sure there's loads of other use cases for this as well. And I'm going to demonstrate how we can look at this artwork on Zero Unbound. And we can see now at the bottom we have these arrows 1 and 2, and you can see because it's a PNG, it's not been an SVG that was minted, so it's really small. However, I can click full screen here and go fit to screen. I can also zoom in. So that's a really nice feature to have, although another way of doing it obviously would be using the SVG feature. You can also see here it says extra URIs, and it's got 2. So that shows at a glance, even if you didn't see this, it shows that this token has multiple artworks in there. But like I said, that's not currently viewable on Object. However, you can view it on Zero Unbound, and it is definitely minted into the token, which we can see if I go to the collection here on Better Call Dev. If I go to the tokens, we can see there's the artifact URI, which is the main artwork that was minted. And there's all the code for it. And then additionally, along with all the other information, we've got another artwork minted here, which is the portrait of Retroman. And then also down at the bottom here, we can see the thumbnail URI as well. So the thumbnail is also minted fully on-chain. Just bear in mind that the only size limit will come in when you're dealing with the thumbnails. So try and keep those under 10 kilobytes really. I think you can go a little bit higher, maybe 15 to 20. But try and keep them as small as possible. If you're really not sure, then you can always leave Zero Unbound to use the original artwork as the thumbnail, and that works just as well, like we did in the beginning. Okay, so the final thing I want to show you is the option to burn. So there's two options. There's burn, which is what you would be used to when you're using Object or Taya, where you send the artwork to a burn address. Now that option's still available, though highly unnecessary for the most part. The other option is this one over here, which is called destroy. Destroy actually completely removes the token, so it destroys the actual token itself. Now obviously this can only be done if you own the token, but this is a way, if you feel that actually you don't want to use this collection and you don't want any pieces minted in there, you can just destroy the pieces and be done with it and know that they don't exist on the blockchain anymore. So you click destroy. Obviously be very careful about doing this when you do it, but I'm just going to demonstrate that when I click there, you can see the entire token here, and I'm choosing to destroy it. So when I click destroy, it's going to remind me, before you destroy, you can do all this editing. You might not need to actually destroy it. So it does warn you beforehand, but I'm going to go ahead and click OK. As you can see, it doesn't cost anything apart from a little bit of gas. Click confirm. I'll just give it a hard refresh. You can see the token has now gone. There sometimes is a caching issue, so it'll still show that there's one token, but that token has completely disappeared. We can also double check this on Better Call Dev. We can see the token is still there in the token section. However, if I jump over to storage here, we can see the token here. If we click on ledger, we can see that the token was removed. So that token has now gone, which is very different to sending it to a burn address. Now there is one more caveat. If you see an object, even though we can see the tokens also disappeared here, if we go to the address of the token, you'll see that it's still there, but you'll see it's been sent to a burn address. Now this is actually not accurate. This is not actually what's happened at all. And I can prove this because if you go to the address that it's apparently sent it to, under the Own tab, you'll see that the artwork actually doesn't exist there. So it's kind of picked an address, and I'm not sure on the details around this, and maybe because the Object app doesn't know what's actually happened to it, and so it's had to kind of fake it in a way to show that what's happened to it. However, the token actually does not exist. And also another way to prove it is I went back in the browser. However, if I was to go to the actual address, which is the contract address /0, you'll actually see that it says page not found. So again, this is proof Object doesn't actually see the token. It's only because I went back to the token that it kind of seemed like it was still cached or something like that. So that's a really nice feature. Not always necessary, but just in case you really need to do it. So it's a new term to use essentially, which is destroy, not burn. Okay, so that's a brief way of how the whole site works. There's also all the other things you would expect. So you can go, if I switch back to mainnet, and we go to the Explore FOC button, we can see there's a bunch of artwork that's minted, and there you can see my collection in there, but you can see a bunch of other artists who've been minting quite regularly. You can click into any piece, and of course you can buy if they're available to sale or if they're listed, but you can also put offers in if you want, and you can view them as you would anything else. So go and have a look through all the artworks that have been minted. I think you'll find that they're really cool. The site's really easy to browse through as well, and it's got a bunch of features that I think you'll really appreciate. So next I want to show you Sifr Zero. So the purpose of this site is if you want to mint without creating your own collection and actually mint to a collective contract instead, which is the Sifr Zero contract, then you can do that via this website, and that is cipherzero.art. It's pretty much the same process. You can connect to mainnet or Ghostnet. For this illustration, I'm going to click Ghostnet. I'm going to upload the artwork, fill in all the normal details as I would. With Sifr Zero, you have to manually put in a lot of the information, so it's a little bit different from Zero Unbound. There is, however, pretty clear instructions in all of the boxes, so you just need to follow that. So for instance, for the royalties for multiple addresses or individual addresses, I'm going to put my address, then colon, and then the number of royalties. Tags is as you would expect. You can do attributes as well. And then you simply click mint token. Okay, so this one is not going to charge me obviously for the collection, but it is going to charge me for the storage of the artwork, which is 1.78 Tezos. I'm going to click confirm. So you can see now we've got mint successful. Now on Ghostnet on Zero Unbound, it's not actually appearing. However, if I actually search for the contract address of the Sifr Zero Ghostnet collection, I can click go, and then I can actually see my token in there. So I click edit token metadata if I need to, and then I've just got to find the piece that I minted, which is the Arcturian Soldier. And I can do all the same changes that I would using Zero Unbound. But obviously I can't make any changes to tokens that were not minted by me. So for instance, if I tried, as an example, let's just change the name here, change it to small test 1, I press update and press OK, you can see again error, failed get results by simulation, so I won't be allowed to do this. So I can only actually edit tokens that belong to me, even though this is a collaborative collection. One of the good things about this site is it also has its own marketplace, which you can collect from and also manage your listings as well. So you can see here's an artwork. This is the first mint that I minted on here at the bottom. It's also indexed by object. So you can see here the same piece is here, and you can see both myself and Yestan, my artists, on there. So it was also a collaboration. If I click manage listing, because I still own one, so I kept one piece, I can list that for, let's say, 4 Tez. I can do a sale split if I want to, I can do a royalty split, but what I will need to do is set Sifr Zero as the operator to transfer the artwork. But of course, I'm not going to list this just to demonstrate what's possible, so it can be listed from here if you want. There again are no fees, so there are no fees that go to the marketplace at all. The same with Zero Unbound. So just bear that in mind when you're doing your listings, and it's a really big incentive to list on both Sifr Zero and Zero Unbound rather than list it directly on object if you're used to that normally. That way you don't pay a percentage fee to the marketplace, you get to keep all of the revenue that you make from your sale. Okay, so that is the entire tutorial. I hope it wasn't too long. I hope you enjoy minting fully on chain. If you have any issues, you can always get in touch with me, drop a comment below if you need to, or you can DM me on X. There's also a Zero Unbound X page, which I will link in the description below. If you've minted any artwork and you're posting it to X, then make sure to use that tag and let everyone know that you're using Zero Unbound as well. Okay, I hope you enjoy minting fully on chain. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I will see you soon.